What's that?
An egg.
A square egg?
13 actors made Hooterville one of the strangest, funniest places in television history. But the glamorous socialite was burying 5 failed marriages in a secret no one talked about. The war hero who rescued 142 Marines couldn't save his own wife from a blacklist. The funniest woman in the cast was drinking herself to death while her best friend, the most famous woman in television, tried and failed to stop it. And the man who delivered the most perfectly timed comedy on the show couldn't hear a single word he was saying. 6 seasons, 13 lives, none of them as simple as a theme song. Eva Gabor as Lisa Douglas. Eva Gabor was born on February 11, 1919 in Budapest, Hungary, the youngest of 3 sisters in a family that would become famous for being famous. She was 46 years old when she became Lisa Douglas, the glamorous Manhattan socialite dragged to a broken-down farm by a husband chasing a dream she never shared. Lisa Douglas looked like a joke on paper, the ditzy wife who wore designer gowns to feed chickens. But Eva played her with something nobody expected: real intelligence. Lisa was the only character in Hooterville who actually understood how that world worked. Her supposedly rational husband fought the absurdity every week. Lisa just accepted it and got on with living. She was the smartest person in the room, and nobody, including the writers, seemed to fully realize it. Off-screen, Eva searched for love the way some people search for work: relentlessly, optimistically, and with diminishing returns. 5 marriages, no children. Her first husband refused to let her have them, and by the time she found stability, the window had closed. After her final divorce, she lived with television producer Merv Griffin in an arrangement Reuters later suggested existed partly to shield Griffin's private life. She built the world's largest wig company. She voiced Duchess in The Aristocats and Miss Bianca in The Rescuers, characters that were her, sophisticated European ladies with hearts of gold. In 1995, vacationing in Mexico, she fell in a bathtub and broke her hip. Pneumonia followed. Eva Gabor died on July 4, 1995 at 76 years old. She is buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park. Just yards away lies Eddie Albert. Her estate was valued at several $1,000,000, the bulk from wigs, not acting. The woman who played a character who hated farm life ended up being the only Gabor sister remembered for actual talent. Eddie Albert as Oliver Wendell Douglas. Eddie Albert was born Edward Albert Heimberger on April 22, 1906 in Rock Island, Illinois. He was 59 years old when he became Oliver Wendell Douglas, the Manhattan attorney who abandoned everything to become a farmer and spent 6 seasons failing at it while insisting he was succeeding. What audiences never knew was what he had been before television. Before Hollywood, Albert worked as a covert intelligence operative, photographing German U-boats in Mexican harbors while performing as a clown and trapeze artist in a traveling circus. During World War II, at the Battle of Tarawa, he piloted a landing craft under direct Japanese fire and rescued 142 wounded Marines from the beach. He was awarded the Bronze Star and never talked about it. He was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. Roman Holiday, the Heartbreak Kid. He grew organic vegetables decades before it was fashionable and kept a cornfield in front of his house in Pacific Palisades. His first wife, Mexican actress Margot, was blacklisted during the Red Scare. His son, Edward Jr., set aside his own career to care for Albert after Alzheimer's took hold in the mid-90s. Edward Jr. was then diagnosed with lung cancer and died at 55, barely a year after losing his father. Eddie Albert died on May 26, 2005 at 99 years old. He is buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park, just yards from Eva Gabor. The man who actually grew organic vegetables his whole life became immortal playing a man who couldn't grow a thing. Pat Buttram as Mr. Haney. Pat Buttram was born Maxwell Emmett Buttram on June 19, 1915 in Addison, Alabama, the son of a traveling Methodist minister. He was 50 years old when he became Mr. Haney, the fast-talking con artist who sold Oliver the farm and never stopped selling him worthless junk for the next 6 seasons. At 18, visiting the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, he was interviewed in the audience of a radio show. His natural wit was so sharp that producers hired him on the spot. He spent 13 years as the Winston County Flash, became Gene Autry's sidekick for over 40 films, and eventually became Disney's go-to villain voice, the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, Napoleon in The Aristocats. He married actress Sheila Ryan in 1952. She died in 1975. He never remarried. When CBS canceled every rural show in 1971, Buttram delivered the definitive epitaph. CBS canceled everything with a tree in it, including Lassie. Pat Buttram died of kidney failure on January 8, 1994, at 78. He is buried at a Methodist church cemetery in Alabama. The boy who was supposed to sell salvation spent his career selling junk, and audiences bought every word. Hank Patterson as Fred Ziffel. Hank Patterson was born Elmer Calvin Patterson on October 9, 1888 in Springville, Alabama. That is not a typo. 1888. The same year as T.S. Eliot. Closer to the Civil War than to the moon landing. He was 76 years old when he became Fred Ziffel, the Hooterville farmer who raised a pig named Arnold as his human son. He had wanted to be a concert pianist. Instead, he became a vaudeville piano player, drifted to California, and spent decades playing hundreds of uncredited bit parts in westerns. He appeared in 33 episodes of Gunsmoke before anyone outside a casting office learned his name. Here is the extraordinary thing nobody knew. By the time Green Acres was filming, Patterson was almost completely deaf. He could not hear his cues, his co-stars, or his own lines. The producers solved it by having a dialogue coach lie on the floor out of camera range and tap Patterson's leg with a yardstick to tell him when to speak. A man who could not hear a word delivered some of the most perfectly timed deadpan comedy in television history. His great niece is actress Téa Leoni. He never knew that would happen either. Hank Patterson died of bronchial pneumonia on August 23, 1975 at 86 years old. His estimated net worth was negligible. The man who dreamed of concert halls is remembered as the father of a pig, and that is a better legacy than he ever expected. Tom Lester as Eb Dawson. Tom Lester was born on September 23, 1938 in Laurel, Mississippi. He was 26 years old when he became Eb Dawson, Oliver's hapless farmhand who called the Douglases mom and dad and loved every inch of that ridiculous farm with his whole heart. Eb was only supposed to appear in a handful of episodes. Lester made him so warm, so funny, so genuinely lovable that the producers expanded the role to a series regular. And the story of how he got it is one of the best in Hollywood. He graduated from the University of Mississippi with degrees in chemistry and biology. He taught science in Oklahoma. Then he moved to Hollywood against every piece of advice anyone gave him. His friends told him he was crazy. Too tall, too skinny, too ugly, Southern accent too thick. You don't look like Rock Hudson. He beat 400 actors for the role of Eb Dawson because of one thing none of them could do. He knew how to milk a cow. He had grown up on his grandfather's farm in Mississippi, and when the audition called for someone who could actually handle livestock, Lester was the only one in the room who wasn't pretending. He referred to Eddie Albert as his surrogate father. They stayed close for 40 years. Every summer during the show's hiatus, Lester traveled the country speaking at churches and revival meetings, often for almost nothing. He won Mississippi's Wildlife Farmer of the Year in 1997. His tombstone reads Eb of Green Acres. After the show, typecasting crushed his career. Both parents died in 2009. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He divorced his wife in 2019 after 12 years. He was engaged to his caregiver, Jackie Peters, at the time of his death. Tom Lester died on April 20th, 2020 at 81 years old. He was the last surviving regular cast member of Green Acres. The man who played a dim-witted farmhand had degrees in chemistry and biology. The character who called Oliver Dad found his real father in Eddie Albert. Alvy Moore as Hank Kimball. Alvy Moore was born on December 5, 1921 in Vincennes, Indiana. He was 43 years old when he became Hank Kimball, the county agricultural agent who could never finish a thought, never give a straight answer, and never remember why he had come. The man trapped in an infinite loop of self-contradiction. What nobody watching at home ever knew was that Alvy Moore had survived the Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the bloodiest battles in American military history. He served in the Marines, fought on that island, came home, and never spoke about it publicly for the rest of his life. When a fellow actor once asked him about it in an interview, Moore changed the subject immediately and refused to go back. He drove a white Chrysler with the license plate GRNACRS until the day he died. He answered the phone by saying, "It's Mr. Wonderful of Hollywood." That line is engraved on his headstone. Alvy Moore died of heart failure on May 4, 1997 at 75 years old. The bravest man in the cast played the most confused character on the show, and he never once let anyone see the distance between the two. Barbara Pepper as Doris Ziffel. Barbara Pepper was born Marion Pepper on May 31st, 1915 in New York City. She liked to say she was born at Times Square and was therefore destined for show business. She was 50 years old when she became Doris Ziffel, the Hooterville farm wife who raised a pig as her son and defended that pig's humanity with absolute conviction. But if you only know her from Green Acres, you are missing the most heartbreaking story in this entire cast. At 16, Barbara Pepper joined the Ziegfeld Follies. She became a Goldwyn girl. In the 1930s, she was a stunning blonde bombshell who appeared in dozens of Hollywood films. And in those chorus lines, she met another young dancer nobody had heard of yet, a girl named Lucille Ball. They became best friends. Before Lucy was Lucy, Barbara Pepper was standing right next to her. Then everything fell apart. Barbara married actor Craig Reynolds in 1943. They had 2 sons. In 1949, Reynolds was killed in a motorcycle accident. Barbara was left alone with 2 boys, no husband, and a grief she never recovered from. She fell into alcoholism and depression. She gained significant weight. The glamorous Goldwyn girl became unrecognizable. The directors who had once cast her as a beauty stopped calling entirely. And here is the detail that hurts the most. Lucille Ball considered Barbara Pepper for the role of Ethel Mertz on I Love Lucy. But Lucy decided against it, reportedly because having 2 drinkers in the cast might cause problems. Vivian Vance got the part instead. The most famous supporting role in television history went to someone else because Barbara's best friend knew she couldn't trust her to stay sober. But Lucy never abandoned her. She found Barbara work whenever she could, including guest spots on I Love Lucy itself. The Green Acres role was a lifeline, a steady paycheck arranged, many believe, through Lucy's influence. Barbara Pepper died of a heart attack on July 18, 1969, at just 54 years old, while Green Acres was still on the air. She was one of the youngest members of the cast to die. The woman who started her career as the most glamorous person in the room ended it playing the mother of a pig. And she was grateful for the work. The only person who never gave up on her was the most famous woman in television. Bea Benaderet as Kate Bradley. Bea Benaderet was born on April 4, 1906 in New York City. She was 59 years old when she crossed over from Petticoat Junction into Green Acres as Kate Bradley, the widowed hotel owner who was the warm, steady center of the entire Hooterville universe. Here is the connection you just caught. Bea Benaderet was also Lucille Ball's first choice for Ethel Mertz. She turned it down because she was already committed to the George Burns and Gracie Allen show. 2 women in this cast were almost Ethel Mertz. One lost the role to addiction, the other turned it down for a prior commitment. Vivian Vance won a part that 2 Green Acres women could have had. Benaderet was the original voice of Betty Rubble on the Flintstones. She voiced Granny in dozens of Warner Brothers cartoons. She never received on-screen credit for any of it because Mel Blanc's contract stipulated that no other voice actor's name could appear. She did some of the most iconic voice work in animation history as a ghost. Producer Paul Henning created Petticoat Junction specifically for her. He believes she deserved her own show after decades as a supporting player. The Green Acres television series was then spun off from her show. She was the seed the entire universe grew from. In 1967, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. She missed most of a season, came back for one final episode, and never returned. Bea Benaderet died on October 13, 1968, at 62 years old, while her show was still on the air. Petticoat Junction never recovered. The woman who missed the most famous supporting role in television history went on to become the mother of an entire television universe, and she died before she could see what it became. Frank Cady as Sam Drucker. Frank Cady was born on September 8, 1915 in Susanville, California. He was 49 years old when he became Sam Drucker, the general store owner who served as the calm, sane center of a town that had absolutely no use for calm or sanity. Sam Drucker holds a record that will never be broken. He is the only character in television history to appear as a regular on 3 different sitcoms simultaneously: The Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, and Green Acres. 142 episodes of Green Acres. 152 episodes of Petticoat Junction. Television's ultimate connective tissue. Katie was Stanford-educated, trained in London theater, and appeared in Hitchcock's Rear Window. He married his Stanford sweetheart Shirley, and they stayed married for 68 years, one of the longest marriages in Hollywood history. In retirement, they moved to Oregon and took annual month-long hiking trips to Switzerland well into their 80s. Frank Cady died peacefully in his sleep on June 8, 2012, at 96 years old. The most sophisticated actor on the set spent 170 episodes selling feed and penny candy behind a general store counter, and called it the best job he ever had. Sid Melton as Alf Monroe. Sid Melton was born Sidney Meltzer on May 22, 1917 in Brooklyn, New York. His father was a Yiddish theater comedian. His brother became a Hollywood screenwriter. Sid stood 5'3" and spent 60 years making people laugh without ever becoming a household name. He was 48 when he became Alf Monroe, one half of the most incompetent carpentry team in television history. During World War II, he entertained American soldiers overseas. Two of his films later ended up on Mystery Science Theater 3000, where the hosts gave him the nickname Monkey Boy. He never drank alcohol his entire life. He resurfaced decades later on The Golden Girls as Salvador Petrillo, proving his career had a longer arc than anyone predicted. Sid Melton died on November 2, 2011 at 94 years old. The man who played everyone's sidekick outlived almost everyone he ever worked with. Mary Grace Canfield is Ralph Monroe. Mary Grace Canfield was born on September 3, 1924 in Rochester, New York. She was 40 years old when she became Ralph Monroe, the female carpenter who wore overalls, worked construction, and greeted everyone with a cheery howdy doody. Ralph Monroe was one of the most quietly subversive characters on 1960s television. She was a woman named Ralph, explained by the fact that nobody would hire a female handyman. She dressed like a man, worked like a man, and the show never once made her the butt of the joke for it. In 1965, on network television, that was radical, and nobody seemed to notice, which might have been the most radical thing about it. Before Green Acres, every Broadway play Canfield appeared in closed within a month. She spent decades being overlooked. Then she played a woman named Ralph who built walls that fell down, and the whole country remembered her name. Mary Grace Canfield died of lung cancer on February 15, 2014, at 89 years old. Her death left Tom Lester as the last one standing. Parley Baer as various roles. Parley Baer was born on August 5, 1914 in Salt Lake City, Utah. He was 51 when he began playing multiple characters across Green Acres. The Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Peterson, and assorted officials who were all exactly as absurd as everyone else in Hooterville. When even the government was crazy, Oliver had nobody left to appeal to. Most Americans heard Parley Baer's voice every single day without knowing it. He was the voice of Ernie Keebler, the head elf, for decades of cookie commercials. He appeared on everything from The Addams Family to Star Trek Voyager. He may be the only actor in history who governed Hooterville, lived in a hollow tree, and traveled the Delta Quadrant. Parley Baer died on November 22, 2002, at 88 years old, following a stroke. Most people who heard his voice every day never learned his name. Eleanor Aughley as Eunice Douglas. Eleanor Aughley was born Eleanor Zellman on November 19, 1905 in Newark, New Jersey. She was 59 years old when she became Eunice Douglas, Oliver's disapproving society mother who could not comprehend why her son had abandoned Manhattan to become a farmer. And here is the detail that changes everything you think you know about this cast. Eleanor Aughley was the voice of Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty. She was the voice of Lady Tremaine, Cinderella's stepmother. Disney animators designed both villains' faces to look like hers because she served as the live-action model for both characters. She was also the original voice of Madame Leota in Disney's Haunted Mansion. If you have ever been to a Disney theme park anywhere in the world, you have heard Eleanor Aughley's voice. It is still playing, today, right now, and almost nobody knows her name. She was only 5 months older than Eddie Albert, the man who played her son. She almost turned down Maleficent because she was battling tuberculosis. She reconsidered and delivered what many consider the greatest villain voice performance in animation history. Disney never invited her back. She received no residuals. The films made hundreds of millions of dollars across decades of re-releases. Eleanor Aughley saw almost none of it. Eleanor Aughley died of respiratory failure on November 25, 1991, 6 days after her 86th birthday. Her voice still echoes through Disney parks on 3 continents. The woman who terrified millions of children spent her Green Acres years being reduced to nagging Eddie Albert about moving back to the city. Maleficent, Cinderella's stepmother, the Haunted Mansion, and Oliver Douglas's mother. And nobody in the audience knew they were hearing the same woman. All 13 are gone now. The last one, Tom Lester, died in 2020 with E.B. of Green Acres on his tombstone. A show about a place that made no sense turned out to be full of people whose real lives were stranger, harder, and more beautiful than anything the writers ever invented. Hooterville is still the place to be. Drop a comment, which story hit you hardest? And here's the real question. Did you hear Eleanor Audley's voice before today and never once know her name? Because millions of people did, and that might be the most Green Acres thing of all.